Welcome to a platform where we debate on the top stories of the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, and other leagues with the best in the world of sports. You'll also get interviews with many athletes and media talents at several basketball events, including the WNBA and college basketball. My name is Rafiq Lewison, and this is Nothing But That Sports Talk. Welcome to another episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm Rafiq Lewison alongside a new special guest on the show, Kevin Lewis. You might have seen him connected with Christina Miles and Tarika Frost-Brasby and covered the WNBA the way he has through his podcast, the 9450. So, welcome to the show.
Hey, yo, what up? What it is? What's popping? Everything's all good, Rafiq. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk some basketball with you today.
Yeah, especially with the NBA Finals going down. And, of course, the WNBA season is literally one quarter in. A lot has happened during the WNBA. The viewership's gotten up. Fans are going crazy, and they're doing it for a reason. And it's pretty much a lot of basketball reasons for fans to go crazy with these. I mean, come on now. What are your overall thoughts on the way the WNBA has grown from when you started watching it, and how did you get started on covering the WNBA?
Yeah, so I am, it's bittersweet for me because I am a little stingy when it comes to coverage, but I think that growth is always good. And might I say, growth is always great for any entity trying to establish themselves into big markets. And I also believe that from a just as an avid fan first of the WNBA, been watching since its inception in 1997 till now, been covering women's basketball for 4 years, but actually have been around women's basketball more in particular on the college level since college myself. So I'm talking about maybe almost 18 years of overall women's basketball coverage and just experience between coaching, training, and covering the game itself. So to see the growth and where it has transpired, especially in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, it's been incredible to watch. And again, because I'm one of those stingy type guys, sometimes I kind of see different takes, and I wish that we could have our dear old women's basketball the way that it was. But however, you don't get any growth or any material from a monetary standpoint without some type of drama, without some type of oh my gosh, without some type of I would say shock value moment, because that's what big dollars is really about. It's about shock value. It's about big drama, and sometimes you have to look at the glass half full as opposed to a glass half empty. And the WNBA has been an incredible product for a very long time. And for the eyes that we've seen so far, especially in the past year, more in particular the past 4 years, I would say, from an overall women's basketball standpoint, not just including the WNBA, just from a women's basketball standpoint, it's been fun to watch. But again, I think that a lot more could be done.
Yeah, especially, and you notice there's a lot more is starting to get done because you already add like 2 different teams. I mean, you got the Golden State Valkyries about to start like in another year, and then the year after that, Toronto will have a WNBA team. I mean, seriously, that's how you know the league started to grow, because let's not forget, at one point over a century ago, the NBA had this amount of teams. When the Celtics were winning championships during the Bill Russell days, and may God rest his soul, Jerry West, he was in the finals, teaming up with Will Chamberlain. But now we're probably getting a sense of what the NBA fans had to deal with when the NBA had this amount of teams. There's a lot of room for growth, but the only difference is back then there was no broadcast. There was not that many. It was not this amount of range of broadcasting options for you to watch basketball. Right now, we like over a quarter century into the WNBA, and we see, and throughout this whole quarter century, you see the Houston Comets have a dynasty. You see this Los Angeles Sparks win a couple championships. You've seen the Phoenix Mercury win 4 championships. In the 2010s, you see the Minnesota Lynx create a dynasty. And now we're at the beginning part of the Las Vegas Aces dynasty when, well, they probably would have been a dynasty if they didn't get smoked in the bubble in 2020 or Asa Wilson didn't get blocked by Brittany Griner. But that's besides the point. The Aces are starting to build a dynasty. You have to win it back to back. And yeah, we'll probably get more into that in a minute. But when you watch the first WNBA game, like what went through your mind as far as thinking that, oh, I want to be involved in women's sports one day?
Well, it's funny that you talk about the very first WNBA game. It also actually stems back to the 1996 USA Women's National Team,
Mm-hmm.
and the very first time I seen them in Atlanta, I said, "Oh my goodness, why isn't there a domestic league?" And this is me being 11, 12 years old at the time. I'm like, why isn't there a league of their own in the United States? Literally, because a little bit of background of myself. I play basketball. I've played up to the D1 level. A lot of my training and a lot of discourse from a knowledge standpoint does not stem from men. It stems from women. I
Mm.
had I had cousins that played. I had aunts that played, and they taught me the game before really honing into my skill talent and talents with my then coach, and shout out to Coach Josh Staley, who was the girls' head basketball coach for my high school. So it all goes back to women's basketball, and because I played below the rim, not the best athlete, but I had the tremendous amount of skill, tremendous amount of handle to play under the rim and understand angles and understand different ways to score and different ways to play, make, and distribute. Um, a lot of the games that I watched was women's basketball, women's college basketball. I look at the early 90s with Dawn Staley in Virginia, Tammy Reese in Virginia, looking at a lot of those mid 90s Tennessee teams with the three Meeks. Going into high school, looking at Candace Parker, who I thought was the very first unicorn, someone who can handle the rock at 6'4" and can dunk, and beating out JR and Josh Smith in the McDonald's All-American Dunk Contest and things of that nature, which was incredible to me. So I thought that from a basketball standpoint, just the inception of it, watching that first Sparks New York Liberty game with Lisa Leslie and Rebecca Lobo and Crystal Robinson and Teresa Weatherspoon. I thought that was just amazing. And for me, also what to me catapulted the women's basketball game on a national stage is watching the episode of Martin when the U.S. national team was on that episode and they were whipping him, Cole, and Tommy's behind in 3-on-3 basically. And I felt at that time as a kid, oh yeah, it's time. So shout out to the OGs, Cheryl Swoops, Cynthia Cooper, Tina Thompson, Lisa Leslie, Rebecca Lobo, Teresa Weatherspoon. Don Staley didn't come in until 99 with the Charlotte Sting, but even in Charlotte, Andrea Stinson and Allison Feaster, and a lot of other, in Charlotte Smith, a lot of women who have paved the way, and I just have to pay homage to because they, walk. So Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Brianna Stewart, Candace Parker, and others, Asia Wilson, so that they can run. And I just have so much love and admiration for those legends. And if I wouldn't even go all the way back to college, Cheryl Miller, who I think is one of the greatest women's basketball players of all time, if not the greatest women's basketball player of all time. And even the McGee twins, back when USC in the early 80s were winning championships, and those La Tech teams winning championships. A lot of people don't know that Deborah Rodman, Dennis Rodman's sister, were on those La Tech teams. So I just have to pay homage to all of those that were in front of us so that we can enjoy what we call the WNBA today.
That is true. And you know what? I remember speaking to Becky Hammond at the NBA Finals shoot around last year, and she mentioned that before the WNBA was even what there was even a WNBA, there was a WNBL.
Yes.
That basketball. She told me about that basketball league. I was like, wow. Yeah, she's very knowledgeable. And this is somebody that came into the WNBA as an undrafted rookie and played like 2 or 3 finals. I mean, she may not have had success as a player she has as a coach, but that knowledge and wisdom can teach you something.
Absolutely. And Becky Hammond, one of the brightest minds of the game. And I truly, truly admire what she did in New York, and then moving on to San Antonio with the Stars, playing in those finals. And I want to add another dynasty to your list of dynasties. Those early 2000 Detroit Shock teams.
You can't forget about
incredible.
that. You know what? Yeah, we can't forget about that. I remember. Yeah, I remember watching Detroit beat the New York Liberty in the playoffs 2 years in a row. 07 and 08. I literally started watching basketball around like the mid 2000s when the Liberty were bad to a point where they traded where you already talked about the Becky Hammond trade to the San Antonio Superstars. She made to the finals with them, and she built a legacy in the San Antonio Superstars before they moved to Vegas. And then that was around the time where, and the Liberty surprisingly made the playoffs in 07, 08, only to get run out the building by the Detroit Shock. Those 2 overtime losses stung a lot.
Listen, that 08, let's just briefly talk about that 08 season, because on both the Eastern Conference and Western Conference side, it was crazy. Now, I will say this, without Sophia Young's shot in the playoffs, I think that the Sparks would have easily been in that WNBA finals in 08. But that Sophia was the year Young,
Sparks won national championship 2 years ago when she came in as a rookie of the year and MVP.
Absolutely.
I remember that. I witnessed, and I even went to shut down Rutgers women's basketball team in the national championship. Sorry, Benai Laney. I know you weren't playing around that time, but I had to bust your chops.
Yeah, and shout out to my 9450 partner, Brittany Wallace, who was actually on that team that year, that 08 Rutgers team, and shout out to C. Vivian Stringer as well, a coaching legend. But yeah, that 08 WNBA season was like one of the craziest seasons that I've ever witnessed, from just a playoff standpoint, because like you said, Detroit in New York. I mean, Detroit was just a juggernaut, especially back in that time. And going back to that 03 championship when they went from worst to first, that was something incredible. When you had this, when Swinton Cash came in, as a rookie, and you had Ruth Riley playing, playing in that game, the former Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And I think that from that standpoint, that was when I was in college. That was when I was a scout player for the Clemson women's basketball team at that time. So just women's basketball as a whole for me has just been a part of my journey, has been a part of my life for forever. And I truly, truly admire and I cherish this game a lot. So I think that it's just it's something that I don't take for granted, because I always say that women's basketball is the purest form of basketball. Because I think for us as men, we can get away with a lot because of our athletic abilities. We can't say the same for women. However, the times has changed. Women are a lot more athletic than what we're used to seeing, and it's incredible to see. And I truly believe that no matter what, from an athletic standpoint, women has turned the tide of how we look at them as athletes. They've always been incredible athletes, But this generation of athletes moving forward has definitely, to me, changed the trajectory of how we're going to watch women's basketball going forward. And it's more of a positive thing more than anything. Because when you look at someone like Kiki Ariafin that can dunk straight off of a pick and roll in her workouts, and you see others like Ashlyn Watkins dunking, straight off. I'm talking about full hand wrist over the rim. It's so incredible to watch, Rafiq, and I truly, truly enjoy the women's game so much that, to me, honestly, I don't even need to see dunks. All I need to see is the purest form of the game.
Exactly. All we need to see is that you know how to do a layup, and you know how to shoot, and you know how to play.
That's it.
That's it. Like, we see enough of that in the 2000s. Well, first Lisa Leslie did dunk first, then Candace Parker, then Brittany Griner did dunk in the first WNBA game. And you know what? We can't. You know what? That's in the WNBA. And I'm going to switch to college for a bit. And you mentioned how incredibly blown you were with college basketball. I know you were blown a lot when you saw UConn build the college basketball dynasty during Diana Taurasi days in the with the majority of the 2010s. Even when Brianna Stewart there, when Brianna Stewart was there, they almost never lost a game.
Absolutely. So you know what's funny, and I'm gonna say this on your show, and folks, listeners, watchers, please don't be mad at me. As a fan, I was not a fan of UConn because they won so much.
What?
I was not a fan of UConn because they won so much. So you know how if we go to the men's side right quick, Kobe was an assassin, right? I didn't like Kobe because he was just that good. I didn't like Kobe because he was just that good. I didn't like the Lakers because they were just that good, especially the era with him and Shaq. Just didn't like them. And on top of that, the hero for me was Allen Iverson. And 2001 hurt me to the core because I didn't see the Philadelphia 76ers win the NBA Finals that year. And that's part of the reason why I had such a disdain for the Los Angeles Lakers. But going back to UConn was, again, the juggernaut. I wanted to see someone else win. And in order to do that, you had to beat UConn. And no one was beating UConn. So at that point, as a teenager in the mix of playing basketball and understanding more about the game, I'm like, come on, UConn. Can y'all just lose one time so I can see somebody else celebrate?
Well, you can take 2017 Mississippi State team for that.
Absolutely.
A year later was Ricky Cooper was the year where Ricky Cooper won the national championship for Notre Dame in 2018. You can take both teams for that. And
absolutely,
UConn, they're trying to get back to that winning pedigree, but you could take this year they lost to Iowa, and
so we do have to thank Morgan Williams in overtime hitting that elbow jumper, right? We have to thank her. And I do cherish UConn basketball a lot, because I do have some good friends that played on those dominant UConn teams. Shout out to Ashley Battle, the class of 2002, who was a former New York Liberty great six seasons in the WNBA. Now doing her big one with the Boston Celtics as a player development, as part of their player development team, as well as Connecticut Sun play-by-play analyst as well. So for sure, shout out to her. Shout out to Alice. Shout out to Kalana Green, who went to Timberland High School in St. Stephen, South Carolina. She went on to play for UConn and won a few championships. With Maya Moore and Renee Montgomery in that squad. So got a nice couple friends there that went to UConn and played for UConn and did their big one. So shout out to them for sure.
Yeah, we gotta give a shout out to them indeed. And you know what? Yeah, your journey kind of like you got a head start when the WNBA literally began. Like I mentioned before, I didn't start watching it up until like 2006, and I believe that was a 10-year anniversary season when when the Sacramento Monarchs were coming off a championship win. And unfortunately they lost Game 5 against Detroit Shock. And Detroit Shock probably would have had a dynasty if Swing Cassidy missed that game-winning attempt in Game 4. And then Felix Mercury went down to Detroit and smoked them behind.
Yep.
I know Tarika wasn't a fan of that. I mean, I remember Foster Bresley told me she was a Detroit Shock fan before they moved to Dallas. Now she's a Connecticut Sun fan and a Connecticut Sun journalist.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? The history of that is before they moved to Dallas, they were in Tulsa. So they went from Detroit to Tulsa to Dallas. And then from a Connecticut Sun standpoint, they were originally the Orlando Miracle. Yeah. So it's fun. And shout out to my sister, Tarika Foster Brasby. She is such an incredible basketball mind, incredible basketball talent. And you know, those Detroit Shock teams, I was a huge fan of the Detroit Shock. My absolute favorite player on that team was Deanna Tweedy Nolan. Someone at 5'9", 5'10" that could dunk and have like the sure athletic. She was one of the original smaller guard, not small guard, because from a woman's standpoint, I think 5'9" and taller is considered tall for women. But at her size, in being able to jump the way that she did and have that athletic ability the way that she did, and all to, I would say, take a step back in scoring and do her big one on the defensive end and make clutch shots. That's something that a natural scorer normally doesn't do normally. But for her to make that sacrifice for the sake of the team and winning, she got 3 championships out of that. And that's more than I could ask for as a fan for Tweety Nolan, and I love her dearly. So those Detroit Shock teams, I loved those Sacramento Monarchs teams. I know in 05 they won the championship with Rebecca Brunson, Yolanda Griffith, Carol Lawson, Tisha Penachero. So I'm such a nostalgia guy when it comes to the WNBA, because again, that was the era of me really coming into my own. And a lot of people don't know that 2002 Sparks championship, if I'm not mistaken, that one came off of a win versus the
New York. I think we swept the New York Liberty that year in a 2-game series, and I remember watching. I remember watching highlights of it when I was really just starting to get into watching the WNBA as a fan. I did watch highlights of that last defensive stop in Game 2, but I forgot where the Liberty couldn't even get a shot off before time out. That was the way the Sparks defended Liberty at that time was sick. And
it was time.
Obviously, they haven't been to the finals again up until, of course, last year, 2023, when
it was time. At that point, Michael Cooper was pretty much getting tired of losing at that point, especially with the Houston Comets. Houston Comets were the ultimate dynasty, right? They set the bar, set the stage for WNBA dynasties, and Lisa Leslie and Michael Cooper and that Los Angeles Sparks squad was like, listen, I am sick and tired of losing. Let's go ahead and do our big one. Let's go ahead and get our championships. So again, just going back to how I came about from, a covering the sports standpoint. This is just going back to 2020. Just COVID was a thing, and Clubhouse was becoming a very popular thing. And for someone like me, I am a basketball junkie. When it comes to watching film, when it comes to analytics, when it comes to just the overall enthusiasm of the sport, of the game itself, like that's me. I can tell you everything under the sun from a history standpoint, if you need me to. And I felt like at that point, even though I knew from a business standpoint, there wasn't a lot of, I would say, intelligence in regards to who was running things in the league. I felt like it was time for me to speak up and speak out on that and give it my own, I would say, my own flavor to the game because again, I'm always a nostalgia guy. I'm a born in '88, so I'm a '90s kid at heart. So the '90s was considered the golden era of hip hop. It was considered the golden era of sitcom television. So I grew up on The Fresh Prince, Martin, Family Matters, hanging with Mr. Cooper, all of those feel good shows. And I wanted to kind of mix those two together, or mix all of those together when it comes to women's basketball, when it comes to hip hop, when it comes to just the sake of the '90s, what the '90s look like. And I befriended Daniel Artest, and ultimately we came up with the 9450, and that's how we got started. We started officially covering in 2021, but really got started in clubhouse rooms in 2020, late 2020. There was a clubhouse room where we hosted women's basketball talk, and that garnered more than 1,500 listeners. The best of the best was in and out of the room that night. Lisa Leslie listened in. Katie Smith came on the stage. Sue Bird was listening in on that as well. I want to say Diana Taurasi I saw come in. That's how I befriended Ashley Battle, and a lot of other WNBA greats. Chastity Melvin, Sylvia Crawley Span, uh, Val Whiting. I mean, there were just a lot of WNBA and former WNBA players just coming in and out of the space. And I want to give a shout out to B. Terrell, Miles Ehrlich, Christina Williams, and Tarika Foster Brasby again, and Owen Pence for sharing that stage with myself and Daniel Artest. And then there were others that followed in, and those who had covered the game for a very long time, like a Dorothy Gentry. Shout out to her, who covers everything Dallas between the Mavericks and the Wings. And there's so many others that my mind is going blank, and that I would shout you guys out if I was in my right mind. But it was just so many folks just coming in and out of that room, and we just figured, well, why not we expand on that and start covering the game for what it is, the purity of it. And I am glad to say that we have built an incredible fan base. We have built a system that is pretty respectable. We've had our ups and downs, but overall, like, we just want to make sure that we talk the game in an objective manner. We also put our spin on how we promote the game, how we talk about the game, and how we cover it. And it's been an incredible journey so far, and hopefully we can continue this journey moving forward.
That's exactly a great point. And yeah, those women that you just mentioned, they deserve a shout out, especially for me, because yeah, well, obviously I know Christina Williams obviously told you this when we was on the Spotify, when she did a show in the Spotify Green Room back in the day, and in terms of how me and her got connected, and how me and Ari got connected. Shout out to Ari Chalmers, who was part of
shout out to Ari for sure.
Now she's working for Enscape and ESPN. Yeah, Christina and I were the first people to actually come on my show, and this is to give you a reminder. You come on the show back when it actually was a podcast before I started using this platform to start covering events. Man, so then a year later, I've had Monica, and then from that point on, when I started focusing on it consistently after graduating college, after graduating with a master's degree in 2019, I managed to get Monica McNutt, Tykira Carter, and then a year later, I've had Camille during the days of WSLAM. I've had Grady Diaz, who I interviewed with Christina, managed to hear her story and how they both managed to talk about their experience covering the finals of 2019, which is unfortunately the last finals before the COVID pandemic hits. Mm-hmm. And then Tarika, and well, even though I've known about Tarika that year in 2019, she didn't come on my show 2021. 2 times, I may add you. I mean, And obviously it was opening day for the WNBA 2021 when the Connecticut Sun steamrolled the Atlanta Dream and Sabrina Ionescu had an official welcome to the WNBA. We can count the bubble season all you want, but to me, that shot was Sabrina Ionescu hit against the Indiana Fever back with limited fan capacity. That was to me the beginning part of her WNBA career, in my opinion, because Sabrina Ionescu, she showed you what she was during her days at Oregon.
Yeah, I won't disagree with you there, because that was an incredible shot. Actually, she came off I think I want to say it was
came off a screen,
came off a stagger screen off the left side,
and then launched that shot with like 5/10 of a second. That was crazy.
Yeah, that was crazy.
2 games in the bubble. It's going to play like 3 games and a half.
Yeah, because she injured her ankle really bad in that wobble season, so she didn't get the full 2020 experience as a rookie. So obviously, the following year, getting that opportunity to hit that go ahead shot off of that staggered, I believe it was kind of like a sideline out of bounds where they were in a box, and she first, I want to say, she screened the screener and then came off of a staggered to hit the shot off of a really good pass. So but yeah, that's how I started covering the game. And again, hopefully roles for me have expanded, now producing shows for our network, the 9450. Shout out to Lolivia Pope Lauren. She has been a great addition as our managing partner. Shout out to 21 Titles and Brittany Wallace and Shantae. They have been an incredible add as well. And like you've said, you've interviewed Grady, you've interviewed Tarika and Christina.
And Miles early came on the show. And, well, I kind of found out
and Owen.
The minute I jump on the Liberty Zoom calls, and I've been on almost Zoom calls after almost every loss. And I may not always get to interview them, but the fact that I even came on and managed to get some content for the WNBA when everything was limited to just Zooms before we worked our way back to being what it is right now, that those opportunities led to me covering the WNBA draft 2023 when Aaliyah Boston came in, and then of course game 3 and 4 of the finals last year between Liberty, which was pretty much the talk of the town in 2023 at the acquisition of Liberty pickup, and the Aces being the defending champions. And yeah, that loss really stings.
I know it still stings as a former New Yorker and a Liberty fan, from the outside, looking in. So but yeah, that's how my journey started. And again, we have so much more to go, so much more to talk about. So I know you wanted to ask about Caitlin Clark and the whole.
Yeah, we got to get to talk about that because she got snubbed. I mean, but let's be realistic. She only had one invite to USA training camp, and those other 12 players that did make it, they've been trying out for the team for the past 3 years.
Yeah,
Caitlin Clark's phenomenal.
Right. You're right.
Her style of play is the reason why the viewership started to go up in the WNBA draft, and the game's viewership started to go up. People are paying the money just to watch Indiana Fever, even though they're not good. They want to watch Caitlin Clark play. They want to watch Angel Reese play for a below-average Chicago Sky team. And they faced off in the national championship in 2023. That could be that rivalry could be the next two Bird versus Diana Taurasi.
Yeah, so
Brianna Stewart versus Asia Wilson. That rivalry is going to be something to watch in the next 5 years.
For sure. So I want to add on to your context regarding the USA team. And I know that this is probably not going to be the last time we explain it, but you're right. There is a process when it comes to Team USA. It normally takes as much as 3 years to figure out a roster for Team USA. And when you have someone who hasn't been a part of that 3-year process, is a very high chance that that person will not be on the final Team USA roster. Now, I've heard reports that she could be an alternate if someone were to back out due to injury, or due to, personal reasons, she could be one alternate of many. However, this is a young lady who is 22 years old, and there are going to be many Olympics and World Cup qualifiers and World Cup championships and FIBA championships to be considered. And I have zero doubt in my mind that she will indeed be a part of those future teams. But a lot of people just goes back to the marketing and the viewership part of it. Now, I am one to believe that from an Olympics standpoint, because of the way it's been covered and the way that it's been broadcast, that no matter what, the Olympics are going to be watched regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, from a business and marketing standpoint, it matters. However, it's going to happen. It's just not going to happen this year. And I don't think that members of Team USA and that selection committee is going to lose sleep over marketing and viewership. But I do know what they'll lose sleep over is if they don't get an eighth straight gold medal in Paris come this summer in about 4 to 5 weeks. That's where they'll lose sleep over. And that's why you have the roster that you have. And at this point in time, Caitlin Clark, who is a phenomenal talent, just isn't ready, in my professional opinion, to take that additional task to be a part of Team USA at the moment. Will she be a part of Team USA? Of course. I have no doubt in my mind about that. However, I am not losing sleep over the fact that Caitlin Clark is not going to be on this team, all because of marketing and viewership. The point in the fact of the matter is we want to win gold. Can she help? Maybe. Would she have played? Probably not. So what are you there for in the first place? So that's my take on it. And that's as um that's as cut and dry that I could really talk about that, because again, this is a process. So I think that it wasn't a snub, but I do think that in the future she'll have her opportunity.
Yes, she will. I mean, look at Sabrina Ionescu. She's been trying out for USA team since she was like a teenager. You see the old footage on her Instagram where they were showing the footage of her being interviewed at USA when she was like 16, 15, 16 years old. And look where she is now.
Mm-hmm.
But now she's been, I mean, everybody on that roster is well, except for Defisa Collier, has been to an NBA finals. They won championships. That's type of spirit is what it takes to make a USA roster in FIBA World Cup and the Olympics.
Yeah. So, and again, it's just one of those things where I think sometimes we overanalyze, and when I say we, I say we as media, but from an anomaly standpoint, I think there's a lot of us with enough common sense to understand why, and then there's a lot with not too much common sense that just wants the clicks and the ratings and for people just to talk about them. So that's just how a lot of people tend to engage. This is why they call it engagement farming. We're in an age of social media where everybody has something to say and everybody is in front of somebody. So I think that's part of it. Why the conversation continues to mount. But really, this conversation could have ended the day that they officially announced the roster, even though it was leaked a couple days prior. But my thoughts on the USA roster. It is an incredible roster. I love I love what they've assembled. I love what the selection committee have assembled. They've done an incredible job. It's a sure mix of versatility, sure mix of scoring talent, sure mix of shooting and defense from an intellectual standpoint. So I think that we have a really, really, really good squad. This is a squad that's going to go to Paris, in my opinion, and can do a lot of great things. And we know that France is hosting, so I know that that French national team is doing everything in their power to be relevant, and to be, a top three team coming into the Olympics. They're going to have a lot riding on this being the host, but Team USA going for their eighth straight, it needs to happen. I mean, I think it's going to happen. And shout out to the selection committee for building such a great roster.
Yeah, exactly. All the players that made it, they deserve to make it. And I can't wait to see. Well, obviously, we see Brandon Stewart win gold before, but the fact that you along with Sabrina, that's became the first Liberty duel to actually make the roster. I can't. I just can't wait to see what the newcomers are going to do, like Nafisa Collier, Sabrina Ionescu, school. Yeah, all the players that never played on USA roster before that literally made that long 3-year process, and the teenage USA teams before they made it to the pros actually putting some serious work going up against some of the best from around the world.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of competition to make it to USA as a player.
Right. Right. And shout out to Kalia Copper too, because she worked her tail off and
Yes, she
she did
did.
an incredible job 2 years ago in 2022 in the FIBA World Cup in Australia. I think that's part of the reason why she's a part of this team too. Someone with athletic ability and one of the quickest first steps that you've ever seen in professional basketball. I just love the way that she plays the game, and she's doing such an incredible job for the Phoenix Mercury right now. A lot of the success of the Phoenix Mercury, as we know them right now, is partly because of Kalia Copper and her scoring ability. So I can't wait to see what she does for Team USA later on this summer as well.
Yep, can't wait indeed. Oh yeah, now we on to talking about a little bit more of the final season from last year, and one is going up, the other one kind of average. But we'll start off with the Las Vegas Aces as they start the season off 5-5, and yeah, I spoke to Becky Hammond about this. She wasn't. She knew it was kind of. I mean, but it was bound to happen. I mean, Chelsea Gray starts to recover from that injury she suffered in the finals last year, and then, well, when you add new players like Megan and Kate Martin, who has starting role for the team when Jackie Young missed the game, and when you're facing teams that are literally getting better, like the Seattle Storm, they got better, the Phoenix Mercury got better, the Minnesota Lynx got better, you're bound to run into a bit of a struggle. I mean, if you think being the championship for a second year in a row is tough, when it's just a New York Liberty you have to worry about, and you were beating up nearly everybody at home, well, except that one loss to Los Angeles Sparks, and then of course the Commissioners Cup loss to Liberty. You have not seen anything yet. When you've seen teams make the offseason moves they've had, and the Liberty hungry for vengeance after losing last year, and the Connecticut Sun being hungry, you're bound to run to this 5-5 struggle. So when you look at the Las Vegas Aces, what are your overall thoughts on the 5-5 struggle?
So I don't think anything of it, to be honest with you, because again, you are working without a full roster, and just like you said, I think the league, from a small sample size of it, has caught up with what the Aces love to do. And I saw the game last night versus the Minnesota Lynx, who, by the way, have done an incredible job and is off to a great start at sitting at about, I think their record is 9-3 right now, or 8-3,
Nine and
something
three.
like that.
They're
9-3. So
New York Liberty, Connecticut Sun.
yeah, so I think that the biggest thing that we're looking at from an Aces standpoint right now is defense. They just seem a bit slow defensively, and a lot of that isn't necessarily from, this is my take just by watching film. I don't think it's much so effort. I think it's much so mismanaging communication. And what I mean by that is, I don't think, because I know that Chelsea Gray is out, but I think if you have a Chelsea Gray on the floor, someone who is a communicator already from a defensive standpoint can help with better rotations, with better defensive schemes in the front line of that defense on the perimeter, so that it helps someone like a two-time defensive player of the year, Asia Wilson, when she's communicating on the back line and getting that help off the top, and being able to rotate and get the blocks that she's gotten over the past 2 years to be defensive player of the year. I think a lot of that is missing. When you have someone like Jackie Young, who is an incredible one-on-one defender, who is also, to me, one of the most underrated help defenders as well. It's a little more of a struggle because I don't think she communicates compared to what a Chelsea Gray would communicate. With Kelsey Plum, everybody knows she isn't the best defender. However, it's not rocket science to see that she attempts to play defense. I'm not going to say she doesn't play defense at all. She attempts to play defense. However, when you having to exert so much energy on the offensive side as well, which she's struggling right now with her shot, sometimes a lot of that mentally can trickle over on the defensive side as well, and you can lose a step or two. So I think it's just more so communication on the front line of that defense on the perimeter. We seen last night where the ball from a Minnesota Lynx standpoint was popping at all cylinders. Their high pick and roll, their hedges, not their hedge, their counters off defensive hedges were just insane because Courtney Williams and Caleb and K-Mac, Caleb McBride has done such an incredible job with wrap passing and pocket passing off of those hard hedges. So I think that from that standpoint, it's something to look at, but not necessarily something to be concerned about for the Las Vegas Aces. I think that they will indeed get it figured out. Asia Wilson is hands down the best player in the league, the face of the league. So I know that she's carrying a lot right now. However, it's still early in the season. Shout out to Shawnee from No Cap Space. She said championships aren't won in June. So let's just kind of, just let the regular season play itself out. We have to remember 2021, the Chicago Sky was 16-16. They won a championship.
That's true.
They figured it out at the right time, and they had the right matchups to help themselves figure it out from that standpoint. So it could be the same. And I'm not saying that the Aces are going to go 20-20. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that right now at a 5-5 start, and those losses, maybe except for the Sparks loss, in my opinion, they were against quality teams. The Minnesota Lynx, the Atlanta Dream, and I know that the Atlanta Dream took one against the Washington Mystics last night, which was crazy. However, again, I do see the Atlanta Dream from a talent standpoint I do see them as a good team. And then you had the Seattle Storm, with that loss as well. And then the Phoenix Mercury, again, another solid team. So I just think that from this standpoint, I'm not concerned at all. There's no reason to push the red button and wave the red flag. There's nothing to be worried about. Again, this is June, early June at that. So we'll see what comes about. And the biggest thing is what's going to happen the 2 to 3 games before the All-Star break, and then the 2 to 3 games after the Olympic break. Right. So that's where we'll figure out where we get what type of Aces team that we're going to look at going into the playoffs in September.
Exactly. Especially, obviously the next opponent, they have the Phoenix Mercury, and then they have the New York Liberty coming up. So you can expect the Las Vegas Aces to actually have some kind of flash of what they were the last 2 years when they were winning championships. But it's a process. I mean, when you win for so long, once you hit that rough patch where you lose one, like when you only win like one game in a 5-game span, you talk to the coach. I mean, I spoke to the coach again. She's not too familiar with losing. I mean, Becky Hammond, the first 2 seasons in the league as a coach, she won championships. Absolutely. So when you have that rough patch, and that's all everybody, her and the players, they all know that they knew that they're going to eventually have some kind of a struggle eventually. It's just a matter of figuring out how they're going to get out of it. And even Kelsey Plum said it. You can't, even if Chelsea Gray does come back, you can't depend on her to actually save the day. You have to learn to try to win what you have right now. So this way, when she does come back, it'll be so much easier to actually get back to the winning flow that you had last year and the year before.
Absolutely.
So it's all about figuring out how to win with what you have right now. The next man up mentality. The same thing with we just saw New York Knicks make it all the way to Game 7 of the semifinals with all the injuries and bumps and bruises after finishing the second seed in the Eastern Conference. So what do you think is going to happen? I mean, eventually, the eventually will come. The injuries will come back to haunt you. But if you're capable of winning what you have right now, then the injury concern is something to think about, but not to think about at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and injuries are a part of the game. That's why you prepare and just like you said, have that next man up or next woman up mentality. So, again, not too concerned. What I am excited about is the New York Liberty and this Commissioner's Cup title game going undefeated in Commissioner's Cup play. They're currently on a 7-game winning streak. I just did a code name Liberty on yesterday. So everybody make sure y'all check that out on YouTube and on Twitter X. I think that they've, even with Vandersloot being in and out of the lineup, I think that they have found a pretty good niche in how they want to play. But Nigel Hamilton has stepped up tremendously as a secondary signal caller. I wouldn't say a secondary ball handler. I would say a secondary signal caller, as meaning playing that pseudo point guard role and actually making the plays for them. She is such a great Swiss Army knife for them. If you need her to score, she'll give you 19 or 20. If you need her to distribute, she'll give you 6 assists. If you need her to defend, she'll give you 2 steals and 7 to 8 rebounds. Like, that's what Benijah Laney does. I feel like she doesn't get enough pub with the New York Liberty, obviously with the big names of Sabrina, Vandersloot, Brianna Stewart, and Jonquel Jones, but her and as well as Kayla Thornton, they have come in and they have embraced their roles tremendously. And I think they finally understand what they need to do for the New York Liberty to be successful. And someone that has come in very, very polished, in my opinion, is Leonie Phoebish. She has been, she's been incredible. I think she's shooting 50% from each corner this season so far. I know she said I know she was 4 for 8 in the game against the Mystics, had 12 points in that game on Sunday. So, I mean, she's been incredible. So I think that from that standpoint, the Liberty has done such an incredible job. And Sandy Brondello, I know that sometimes she gets a little bit of constructive criticism on how she maintains different lineups, meaning some lineups, they come in and it's extremely sluggish, and then other lineups come in and they do extremely well, and she holds off a little too long in keeping them in, and that infamous second quarter comes in, because I don't think they've lost every second quarter of this year. However, their second quarters just have been awful. They'll start off hot.
It did affect exactly. It did affect them in the losses to Chicago Sky and the Lynx. It's funny enough, had the first losing streak in 2 years, but luckily it was only 2 games. The Liberty managed to shake that off, and we won 7 in a row. Once they finally got into the groove.
Yeah, so like I know, but something has to shake for that second quarter. Not to be what it's becoming. Because now every fan in New York knows that the infamous second quarter is going to happen. So as long as they clean that up, I think that they'll be okay. The Liberty right now, I think
they have a 5-day rest before they face the Aces this Saturday.
Yeah. So
the WNBA Finals rematch.
I want to say that right now our power rankings have them at number 1 because they did indeed. We counted them beating the Connecticut Sun for something,
Mm-hmm.
because they beat them in Connecticut, and they, for the most part, had control of that game. I know the third quarter they got down as many as 5 or
They got out
7,
by as many as 7 points, but
but they still
John
had
Cole Jones,
control.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But once John Cole Jones and Sabrina Stewart knocking down shots, they literally have everything under control.
Yeah, I felt like for the vast majority of that game, I would say 85% of that game,
Yeah, that's
they
why I
had
wasn't
some
really well.
control.
I was a little concerned when they were down 7, but part of me kept my faith and
Yeah,
knew that they were going to come back and win that game
yeah,
because they clearly the Liberty had the better team than the Connecticut Sun. Even with the Connecticut Sun starting off the way they did, clearly New York had the better roster and a better team.
yeah. So what was funny to me is, as bad as they are in the second quarter, they put in work in the fourth quarter. Like
Mm-hmm.
like they like the last, like in clutch minutes, 5 minutes and below, they can easily go on like 12-0, 12-2, 13-5 runs of that nature, and seal the deal from that standpoint. So yeah, as long as they can button up those second quarters, I think, in my opinion, if they button up those second quarters, if they have those extremely great 15 plus 15 first quarters, and they button up their second quarters and keep it at least even, I mean, for the most part, they could win, except for the Minnesota Lynx game. They could win almost every game, like single-handedly, in blowout type fashions. I feel like the only game that really got away from them was the one at Minnesota, because they were in the
Yeah, the
game
Liberty came back
against
and tied the game,
Chicago.
but Minnesota with their knockdown shooters, with all the players you just mentioned, they were just well established. But
Yeah,
we being coached by Cheryl Reeve, you gonna run it. It's gonna be hard to win, and well, even with the roster right now compared to the roster you had during the Maya Moore days,
yeah,
Cheryl Reeve really knows how to build these players from the ground up with her coaching techniques and her mindset as a basketball individual.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, overall, the season has been an incredible season. I am so excited to continue to cover it. I am extremely eager to see what's see what's up next. And again, I know I shout a lot of people out, but seriously, to everyone covering the WNBA positively, I want to give a shout out to you guys. I know that we all have different ways of covering the sport. We have our own unique ways of covering the sport, but as long as the space itself is being amplified by incredible people such as yourselves, that's really all that matters. No negativity, even though negativity is a part of the game. As long as that negativity is met with a conscience effort to be respectful. At the end of the day, we all need to respect each other. So I really appreciate everybody who covers the league, and everybody that I shouted out. Y'all know who y'all are. Everybody that knows that I follow them, especially with you, Rafiq. Continue to do what you're doing. You're truly appreciated. So, I'm
Yeah,
just excited
I had to
for
get an
the
interview you
basketball.
at some point. I had to get you on at some point. With
Yeah,
all the Spotify Green conversations that we've had with Christina Williams, I had to get you on the show at some point. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
for sure. And
I
I
just figured right
appreciate it.
now is that time
Yeah,
because you had the women's basketball knowledge and wisdom, and you're one of those few black men that I've talked to, African Americans that really go hard for women's basketball.
absolutely,
Like
absolutely.
I can't even
It's
I can't even get to tell you how much more individuals like us we need in this world.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And again, it really starts with us. Whether we ignore the negative noise, and just continue to overpower that negative noise with positive storylines, and doing, what you're doing what the 9450 is doing, what the committee is doing, what Nat is doing, and Hoopstress is, um beyond the byline with Alfred, Christian, Jasmine, Jordan and Cheryl Swoops with Queens of the Court, Miles and Owen with Pull Up. There's so many platforms. LaChina
China Robinson
Robinson,
with the Rising Media Stars.
yeah, with Rising Media Star. Like, there's so many platforms. Grady Diaz, like there's so many positive journalists and content creators and media entities out there that are doing good work.
Exactly. I mean, shoot. When I covered my first Liberty game in the first WNBA draft, when I covered my first WNBA draft a year ago, that was 2023. I couldn't believe everybody that knew who I was. And Gigi Spear during WNBA finals, she couldn't believe how many people knew who I was when I was covering the WNBA.
Yeah. So
couldn't believe it. Shout out to her, by the way. We can't ignore Gigi Spear.
Yeah, shout out to Gigi,
hard work,
for sure.
Doing hard work at WNBA as well. I was in the same WNBA workshop with her. I know. And that's actually why I got my master's degree.
And shout out to Bryce and Tariq from the Hoodie and Headband Show. They do great work as well. I can't say enough how blessed that I am to meet such incredible people. The dunker spot with Nikias and Steven, Steve Jones, like it's so many people in this space, no cap space, with Andrew, Shawnee, Tyler, Rashard, Greer. I mean, again, there's just so many of us out here, again, in our own way. There's so many fans that have particular ways that they want to listen, and there's so many outlets that provides that. I don't think we had that 4 years ago. I think because a lot of us as fans were just tired of listening to the same thing, where people were just ignoring women's basketball, like literally.
Yeah, you know what? That's one example. Monica, you saw that point on the first take where Monica Bennett shut down Stephen A. Smith, right?
Yeah.
So Trey Carter shut down Stephen A. Smith.
Absolutely.
3 years ago, you could have used the platform to cover the WNBA, and then when you heard the first take, she was like, "Nope, I'm talking to you, and you only Stephen A." That literally shut the house. Oh yeah, I mean, well. I already told you the history too. But that really shows you that people like him need to cover the WNBA a bit more.
Yeah. So and again, it takes these platforms, those smaller platforms that have done the work and put everything behind themselves to value themselves. And I'm truly grateful for everyone out there. I know that a lot of folks, for me, they tell me, man, you might be too nice. Well, I mean, that's just my personality. I'm extremely thoughtful to everyone.
Yeah.
I give a shout out to everyone. I mean, whether people enjoy me or not, I'm not gonna stop the way that I was raised to belittle anybody else, especially when we're all fighting for the same thing, and that's just amplifying the women's game. And more importantly, making sure that we as individuals highlight a lot of the hard work that the women work so hard for.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up this episode. Nothing but that sports talk, and I can't wait to watch Game 3 of the Game 3 of the NBA Finals for the Celtics and the Mavericks. That should be a very intense game, even with Kristaps Porzingis having his injuries. But you know what? I look
thoughts and prayers to Kristaps for sure. Thoughts and prayers to Kristaps.
You see the Celtics going up 3-0, or will the Mavericks take this one?
It's crazy because Luka is fighting some injury as well. I really don't know what to say. I think that the Mavs can take this one. They're going to be home. Derek Lively is going to show up and do something. Kyrie is finally going to show up and do something, I think. So I want to say the Mavericks in a close one tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see it. For Kevin Kdot Lewis on the 9-4-50 podcast, with Feet Lewis on. We'll see you next time.